Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the 92nd Street Y. We can tell that you guys are all so excited, right? My name is Vladimir Duthiers. I'm a correspondent and anchor with CBS News, and I am very, very pleased to welcome the cast and crew of Blue Bloods. Crew.
He does it all.
Right. Writers and journalists at the end here. So I'm going to introduce everybody, although I don't think they need to be introduced, right? Maybe you guys can introduce them. Right? On my right? To his right? And over to his right. Bridget's little brother. The patriarch of the Reagan clan. The beautiful and the babe in the woods. I mean that as a child, as an innocent. Sammy Gale. And at the very end, Kevin Wade, a producer and the writer of the episode that you just watched. Thank you guys so much for being here. This is so cool. One of the things that I realized because we were all sitting in the back, you may not know this, we were all sitting in the back watching that episode. We were also watching you watch the episode. And the first thing that I remarked is when Bridget first came onto the screen, there was a little bit of woohoo, like from the crew, like the way that your brothers actually might catcall you, right? I heard Danny go, like give her a little like elbow, and I thought to myself, wow, they're not only brother and sister on the screen, but they're sort of like that in real life too. Is that? I mean, I get the sense that you guys really feel that way about each other in a familial way in real life, Bridget.
This is on, right? Okay.
Yep.
Donnie and I have known each other for a long time, and he's the reason why I'm on the show, because we did a show together previously, and we had such a great bond. And so he said, come do this. And from the second that we all met, first day of shooting, family dinner, it was nice to meet you, get in your seats, and we became a family instantly.
Tom, I want to ask you, obviously a lot of us who are in the audience, including myself, grew up watching you on Magnum PI. Yeah, that the Ferrari, you must know this, that the Ferrari that you drove, that style of Ferrari is now called like the Magnum Ferrari. Did you know that?
Yeah, I do know that, and about 50 people have come up and said, I spent a lot of money on the car that was in your show. We only had 6 of them. So somebody's in a lot of trouble.
This is 150 episodes. It's getting close to the number of episodes that you played on Magnum, but this has been an incredible run for you.
Yeah, we did 163 hours on Magnum. But Magnum was not canceled. It could have gone on for a long time, but that's what we did. And I was talking to Charlie Rose and everybody today, and we got renewed for our 8th season. And we're at the one we're doing right now is 155, so 9 more, and I guess I break that record. I never thought of it till today. We were on the show, and Will was on the show, and yeah, I'm kind of funny about it. Maybe we ought to tie, but Bridget didn't like that idea.
I didn't like that answer. I wanted to keep going.
This is the number 4 drama on television, ladies and gentlemen. Blue Bloods is the number 4 drama on television. So Donnie, I watched the pilot back in 2010. And when your character, Danny, appeared on the screen, everybody can relate to a cop who is trying to rescue. In the case of the pilot, it was a little girl who'd been abducted, right? And then you found the perp, and you dunked his head in a toilet bowl.
I didn't. Danny did.
Yeah, Danny did. And I remember, and this is a question for the entire cast, the show is very topical, and I remember my first impression was, oh man, they're gonna show this cop like beating up on somebody, you know. And then Bridget, your character, Erin, was the voice of reason, the voice of the law, essentially. I wonder, you know, all of your characters are very complex, but Danny, when you play, Dan, I'm even calling you Danny. Look at that. When you play the role,
It's the suit. It's the suit.
what do you think about when you're playing that character and you're thinking about the very fine line that you walk on the show as the character that you play?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I know, I believe with acting, you play a role when you're ready to play it. You know, as actors, we think we're right for every part we audition for. You know, it's like, I can play this part of an 80-year-old guy. I know I can. And I don't have any hair, it'll work. But you're not ready until you get the part that you're ready to be. And I think all of my years of acting prepared me for Danny. I think this is, you know, if I'm ever fortunate enough to do a second run like Tom's doing such a magnum series, no pun intended, you know, I hope that I would be ready for that. But, you know, all the different parts, whether it's Band of Brothers or whatever, it prepared me to be this guy. And what I mean is, I'm playing him, and I'm playing a police officer who's in a tough situation, whose life is on the line every day, who sometimes walks a very delicate line, you know, to get justice. But, you know, I wouldn't have been able to play that role 10 years ago. I played a cop show before, and I always wanted to be right and the audience to like me. And, you know, I think I'd been around long enough to really trust the character and what's on the page, and that there's so many voices in the show of all the different perspectives of these types of things. If it's a situation where a cop is crossing the line, you know, Bridget can give that point of view, or Will can give that point of view, or Frank or Len or anyone can give that point of view. So the entire piece will be the voice of many different voices, but it's up to me to play the voice that I'm playing. And, you know, I think as an actor, as I said, I wouldn't have been ready 10 years ago to play it, maybe even, you know, 8 years ago. But when this part came along, I was ready to trust what was on the paper and risk the audience not liking me for the better of the show. And as it turns out, thank you, it turns out people understand the character more than I ever knew. And you know, it's, you know, I try to, when I walk through the streets of New York and a cop gives me a nod and says, thank you, you know, it's, we can't always stick someone's head in the toilet, and we can't do those things. But, you know, we appreciate the effort you go to try to do it, you know, honestly, even when it's, you know, crossing the line. And that means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends who are New York City police officers. Are there any New York City police officers here, retired, otherwise? No?
I see one.
Yeah? Okay.
Right here.
There you go. There you go. So one of the things, and this is, I think, Will, a lot of cops tell me that your experience as a rookie in the first season, coming from Harvard, the way that you did, and starting out as a rookie, and also the fact that your father is the police commissioner of New York doesn't really factor into your day-to-day. I mean, we just saw in an episode where you're getting yelled at by internal affairs, and he says, you know, your name's not kryptonite, right? A lot of cops tell me that your experiences as a rookie is very similar to what they've experienced as a rookie, and they don't have the name as having the name of a police commissioner.
Well, I think a cool part of the cool aspect of the story is something that Tom has embraced and embodied, and that he's determined not to show his sons any favoritism. So that's something that sort of came about, I guess, you know, between the characters.
I mean, the name could be a curse and a blessing.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I used to say, well, we can't do the scene in my office. It's on the 14th floor of 1PP. One of his sons will ride up in an elevator. The whole building will know. He's got a private meeting with the commissioner. So we started that way. We break the rules sometimes. But actually, for Frank, actors love faults. And Otherwise, everybody's too perfect, and Frank certainly has. And he really, to a fault, doesn't show favoritism to his sons. In some ways, we've done episodes where it's been demonstrated to him that the rest of the force are really holding these talented policemen back because they don't want to offend Frank. And then, of course, the other side of it, I think, Bridget's character, I think he's always leaning on this DA for some special treatment or tell me what's going on over there. So.
And there's also, obviously, Lou, the character you play, the patriarch of the Reagan family. Everybody has a grandfather or a patriarch like the one that you play. Although the character is unique to the experiences of the Reagan family, I think everybody in the audience can relate to someone who is the glue of a family, someone who keeps and binds the family together. Is that how you interpret the role?
No. Yeah, of course. I think I got to tell this story. When we made the pilot, the first scene that we shot was the dinner scene.
That was the first scene.
The first scene. How do you do? What's your name? And so we all said to Leonard Goldberg, why are we doing this first? I mean, we don't even know one another. And we're supposed to be 4 generations of, And he said, the kids and what the hell, just dive in. And so we had to, while they were lighting, we made up a backstory about what we'd done. And I said, well, I guess I was a cop too, and we were all Marines. The 3 of us were Marines. And then I was a detective, and then went up the ladder and became commissioner, and then retired. Well, I probably got pushed out, but anyway, I lost my wife, and so we ended up living together in the same house. And that's where the Reagan dinner happens every Sunday.
And Len, that's got to be a true story because the wife that you mentioned in the very first pilot episode, you called her Rose, but that's not her name in the show, is it?
No.
Yeah. In the
It
pilot.
was a nickname.
Oh, it was the nickname.
Nice
catch.
Nice
I was
dodge.
like, wait, okay. I thought I heard that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the girl that was playing Bridget's daughter is no longer in the show either. These things happen.
These things
It's
have
TV.
TV.
We call it, not disrespectfully, we call it a Bible. The show just didn't have one. It had no background. We were inventing our background and I love that about TV because you find out more about your character each show you do because you really don't know where they came from. You make up your own, but we know so much more about all these people and where they came from and what their background is just by the fact that we proceeded with their future.
So, Amy, let me ask you this. When the character was presented to you, I mean, clearly the story is about the Reagan family, and they said, look, you're going to play Donnie's wife. And Sammy, you've grown up on the show. I'm just curious, sort of what goes into your mind when you're playing the role that you play, when you know that you're part of this family and they treat you like you're part of the family, but really the story is the family Reagan. That's the story of the show, and you're a part of that. What goes into your mind, sort of like the way you would marry into any family? What's that like?
Well, first I was like, Donnie who? And they're like,
Now you weren't.
and then they said, but wait, and then they said Donnie Wahlberg, and I was like, that guy is really cute. I think I could play his wife. I think that would be a good job.
And I used to have his bed sheets from New Kids on the Block.
No comment.
She really did.
She kids.
I did?
She slept on his face when she was like 14. I love you.
I don't know why I'm embarrassed. This is all totally untrue. But I feel embarrassed anyway. Well, when you get presented with a show that has a pedigree like Leonard Goldberg and Tom Selleck and Donnie Wahlberg and the chance, I mean, I honestly thought, looking at, I'm sorry, I'm like waving in Len's face. I honestly thought when I thought of the pairing of Donnie and I, in my mind, I was like, that's going to work, because I knew what kind of an actor he was. And sometimes as an actor, you get a sense of the flavor of who that other actor is by watching their work. And I'd watch his work and I was like, this guy's terrific. And I think we could do a great job. And so for me, it was about, I didn't really think about your question about how I would fit into the family, but I felt about how I would fit in with these actors and how we could make something work and some sort of magic and familiar connection. And I was all in right away.
Yeah, fantastic. And Sammy, let me ask you, like I said, you've grown up on the show. What's it been like from 2010 to today?
Oh my goodness. Well, when I watch reruns, it's crazy to see me at 14 years old and to now have just turned 21. It's been quite the whirlwind. Yeah. But I mean, look at the people I get to go to work and see every single day. I mean, I have grown up surrounded by the most consummate professionals and role models, and a second mother in Bridget, and
I'm the bad mom.
No,
Fun mom.
she is the most elegant mother, other than my own. But I've learned so much about the craft and what I do, but also just what it means to be a good person and to have a life outside of what you do on set, but also to become family with the people you share the set with. And I think I can say pretty confidently that we are the same off-set as we are on set. So it's been a big blessing for me.
That's awesome. All right, Kevin.
Love you.
Let's talk about some of the ideas that go into the stories, the script writing. What are you thinking about? The show's very topical, and I think that's one of the reasons why people love it so much, because it is very topical. The characters are very real. They are the people that, in some cases, patrol our neighborhoods, but also our neighbors. So what are you thinking about when you sit down to write a show?
We talked to, there's a gentleman here, Detective Jim Nusiforo, who, Jimmy, stand up. Jim is a long time all the way through the ranks up to detective, and he's been our technical advisor on the show. So we'll come up with a story, or more often than not, read something in the newspaper and research it down, and then kind of go to Jim and go, so police-wise, how would this work out? What would the beats be? And he'll guide us the whole way through. So it really is, we don't try to grab from headlines, we try to kind of grab from research. And once in a while, something will dovetail, and we'll put on a show on a certain date, and it will have, that story, one of the stories will have been in the news that week. But it really comes out of the writers talking to cops and talking to Jim and reading a lot and just trying to find true stories.
The ultimate dovetail you just saw. Well, I mean, Kevin probably wrote that Jimmy Buffett thing in retirement about, without any knowledge of him. He wrote that about 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
And about a week and a half ago, he's opening up a Margaritaville now. And he hasn't seen the episode, so.
The Russians hacked Kevin Wade's email and sent it to Jimmy Buffett. We know this to be true.
The Sunday dinner, something that the fans love. It's a hallmark of the show, right? Bridget, you wrote a cookbook you wrote the Blue Blood cookbook, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to ask about that because clearly it's something that the fans love, but it also feels very real. Did you grow up in a home where that was something common?
I grew up in a home where we would have dinner together every single night.
Wow.
And we would have family dinners for every single holiday. So it's totally normal for me to be doing that. And I grew up cooking with my mom, and my aunt and my brothers are cooks. So it was, that's the kind of environment I grew up in.
Yeah.
But I do think that people watching the show, we were speaking about it today, it's a group of people who wish that was their life. It's a group of people who remember that being their life. And we now, we've heard from people that are now starting that to be their life, and they do it on Friday nights, and then they roll into Blue Blood. So they're making it kind of a little event. So,
pretty cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's fantastic, because I think that a lot of people want to either believe that that's a possibility to have Sunday dinner with all of your family, at the table, and yet they get that. If they're not able to do that, they're able to do that with you. Because one of the things I also noticed when I was in the audience is people were talking to the characters, and they're saying, Danny, don't do that, right? Or, Aaron's so strict, And I mean, it feels as if the audience identifies so closely with you guys, right? Am I wrong about that? You guys identify with these folks.
Where this came from, the Sunday dinner.
No, tell us.
It was Leonard Goldberg saw. There's a drawing by Norman Rockwell of a Thanksgiving dinner, and that was his inspiration. And he said, "I want to have a dinner scene in every episode. That'll be the glue that brings it all together after we've seen what Donnie does and what Will does and what Pop does and what Tom does, and then we'll get it around the table and try and educate the kids too, and give them a little perspective." So it was really interesting to me that was his inspiration for the thing.
Yeah, when I met with Leonard, I knew Leonard for the show and read the script. I said, what I really like in this thing is this family dinner, but it's about 8 pages long, and the network's going to cut that out, right? And he said, no, that is a set piece of the show. So that was a deliberate design of Leonard's from day one.
Sorry, Kevin, did you want to add to that?
No, but to be fair, he didn't really tell the writers that it was going to be in every show. So 155 later, as much as we love doing it, it took us till about the beginning of season 2 to realize, oh, no, you have to do this every show. So,
How long does it take to shoot the dinner scene, generally?
About 6 hours, depending on the director. We have a race. We have a timer that goes on each director. As soon as they start, the timer starts, and as soon as they end, they get a prize if they're the first. If they're the last, they don't get the prize. So we don't know, about 6 hours, right?
6 hours and a lot of broccoli.
Wait, what does that mean?
Well, we're not going to go there.
Please don't go to the broccoli.
It's a lot of broccoli.
A lot of broccoli?
We asked them not to serve the broccoli anymore.
Because after 3 hours, it becomes problematic, you see. We're just going to move past that. We're not going to talk about the food.
I
We're
think
gonna
the
talk,
audience gets it.
Talking about the bond, not
Right, the bond.
the issues.
It's in my, it's now really hard to dislodge that from my brain. But let's try. What's your favorite scene that you've been in, Donnie?
Oh, my goodness. Wow, you put me right on the spot, didn't you? There's so many. I know it sounds cliche, but there's something with every character in this family, and that's what always means the most. I told Tom, somewhere in season 1, there was a funeral of a Marine who was murdered, and Danny was written to go to the funeral alone, and they went through drafts where it was going to be all the family, and then they wrote Tom in at the last second, and when I went to work that day, Tom said, they put me in this scene. I would have been happy if you did it by yourself. And I said to Tom, I said, any scene with more than one Reagan is always going to be better than a scene with just one. And that's really, that's what will live with me forever, is the moments when it's me and Tom, mano a mano, or Bridget and I, and Will and I, and Amy and Len. Len and I always joke, we don't get any scenes together anymore, because he's like Danny, 30 years earlier.
Right.
He taught Danny how to walk the line the wrong way. It's good stuff. But the family is really it. We can, we could wish, for these magical scenes. I'm a young, spry guy. I like action scenes and stuff, but nothing will ever mean more than the family stuff. It's so special.
I wonder, Bridget, when your character, it's interesting to me because she is a role model for, I think, a lot of women. And if you had to describe your character, for example, if you were talking to your children about your character, how would you describe it?
It's more interesting to hear what other people would say about her. I think she is the voice of reason. She toes the line. So I don't know. She's strict, flawed.
Flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about the show, I think, which is, and Kevin, you can jump in here, but what I find really fascinating is on a lot of cop shows, every week, what you see is what you get, kind of and there are shows like that. But with this family and these characters, over the last 7 years or so, they've grown, they've matured, they've learned some things. They've had some hard knocks. I mean, in that first season, I thought the Blue Templar storyline was really, really interesting. And the backstory, the Reagan family backstory, I thought was really interesting. And from where those characters have evolved from 2010 to today it's grown in leaps and bounds, right?
I hope so, and thank you for saying that. I think that the big difference to myself and the writers is that we no longer are just trying to find stories where there's a bad guy, a couple of obstacles to catching the bad guy, and then we get the bad guy. It's really a bad guy, and then one of these wonderful characters finds something about this person that they identify with or sympathize with or can walk in his shoes. And so it ends up costing them something to carry out justice. And that's really where the show is trying to live most of the time, and we look for that most, so that these guys have something to play besides just cuff them and bring them in, but that at the end, in the fourth act, hopefully it costs them something.
And I would say that part of the success of this show is that every single year, the writers are writing better stories, more complex, deeper, giving us more interesting stories to play.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned flaws, and all actors that I know, that I like working with, love them. No matter how good their character may be, that's a result on the audience. They have their moments. Every Reagan has had their turn in the box, being out of line. And I think that's really valuable for the audience, because none of us are perfect, and I think people relate to him more. Frank's certainly got his own, he's got a lot of things going on, but I love him dearly.
All right, we have a bunch of questions from you, the audience, and so we're going to go through a bunch of them. I think this one's probably best for Kevin. It says, what can we expect in season 8?
In the best way, more of the same. We don't, because of the kinds of stories we tell, we don't have serial arcs or anything. We will be introducing a new mayor, so that Frank Reagan will be going up against someone quite different from the Mayor Poole, who we have now. And the other things will just be the evolution of the characters, hopefully great stories, but again, pointed towards, at this point, it's 155, whatever it is, episodes. So at a certain point, we're just looking to be able to write for these guys in ways that unpeel more and more of their characters and make them more and more identifiable to the audience for them. So,
awesome. All right, this is from Julie Kim. Congratulations on season 8. Can you share your best off-camera moments? Who wants to take that?
I can share one from the first episode I shot, because I replaced the girl in the pilot, so it was about 5 in. We were all around the family dinner table, and I was just freaking out, nervous, because I was the new girl in town. And my little cousins, before the last take, the whole dinner was about the fact that I didn't want to eat the meatballs. And that
By the
was
way,
scripted.
she was vegetarian at this time, in real life.
Even back then?
No, I can't eat red meat. I'm not vegetarian. But, okay, so the director at the very end says, take a bite of the meatballs. And as soon as he says that, my cousin sneezes, just the largest sneeze, twice over my meatballs. And then I had to eat it. And then as soon as they yelled cut, Bridget handed me a napkin and she was like, spit it out, spit it out. And I was like, that's my mom.
That's a good one. Okay, this question comes from Maria B., a loyal fan. She writes, do you all have a renewed respect for the NYPD and all of law enforcement now in this very divided time in our country? Who wants to take that?
I'm sure everyone could speak on this. Yes. We were shooting a scene the other day, and I can only explain it like this. A lot of people know police officers. A lot of people have police officers in their families. Police officers don't always end up in the news for all the great things they do. They tend to end up in the news for the occasional missteps or mistakes that some make. And I can say the great ones far outnumber the very few bad seeds. But I was shooting a scene the other day, and I had to run through this building with my partner, and there were extras everywhere, and there was someone shooting in this building, shooting a gun. And the director said, this is like the Pulse nightclub happening right in front of your eyes. And he said, so really, be upset and be emotional. And I said, I can't. I said, I have to find this bad guy. And so we did a take, and he had all these extras running the direction he told me to run. He said, you're going to run down there and run through this hallway and then go that way. And I said, okay. And he said, action. And all of a sudden, all the background people were running the way I was supposed to run. I said, time out. I said, let me just tell you two things, sir. One, they'd be running away from the bullets, as they should. I said, and that's who I have to run towards. And not only that, that's the only way I know where the bad guy is because everyone's running away from the bad guy. So the only hope that Danny has of finding this bad guy is to go run towards the danger. And, again, as I said earlier, why I'm ready to play this role, I was, I guess, ready to learn and to truly understand. Jim Nusaforo, who's here, we had an episode early on, I think in season 3 maybe, and Danny had to teach his young son about gun safety. And I've never been a gun person myself, so I was like, okay, would you really do this, Jim? Is he, 13-year-old son or a 12-year-old son? He said, yeah, well, if you have a gun in the house, you have to teach the children in the house how to handle it and how to be safe with it so they know never to touch it. And I was like, okay, wow, it was a little difficult for me to wrap my head around. I've never owned a gun. The day we were shooting the scene, I was really counting on Jim. I count on Jim for everything. He wasn't there. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I called him. I said, Jim, where are you? He said, Donnie, you're not going to believe it. My wife called. My son found the gun box. I have to go home and teach him this very thing right now that you're going to teach on screen. And, if that's not enough for me to understand, whether it's running through the building or gun safety or the different things that cops have to deal with, it's just, there's no more profound moment in my life or my experience in the show than that moment. To know that, wow, this scene that I might not understand, that I might not get as Donnie, the guy who used to be in a boy band and still is in a boy band.
Still is, by the way.
It didn't.
Still is.
It brought it all home for me. It brought a lot of things home for me, and I'm grateful to the show for that. I'm grateful to the writers for that.
Look, we're proud of the fact that we show some balance. We certainly have done stories about cops who are out of line to corrupt. other thing that meant something really important to me, and the answer to your question about the NYPD and police in general is yes, was I had like 2 missions beyond the obligation to entertain people. One was to portray a patriarch who's smarter than Homer Simpson. And because a lot of dads are pretty dumb on TV. The other was to convince CBS and our audience that this world that Frank's in isn't just him going off the reservation because he used to be a detective, but it is about the sheer weight and the debris that he witnesses from his responsibility. Those who watch the show regularly probably have a hint by now. Frank would love an excuse to be fired. That kind of weight on his shoulders, the safety of 35,000 men and women, on a man who ordered his son into harm's way and he didn't come home, is something I think we've made real, and that has a lot to do with Mr. Wade over there.
And yeah. I think that this discussion leads to another question, which is very similar. And Donnie, to your point, I mean, I did a story. I'm doing a story where I got to go to the police academy here in New York City, and they actually had me in certain scenarios that they put young police officers in. And there was one particular scenario of a person who had a knife in an apartment, and they have a full-scale size New York City apartment at the police academy where these trainees and cops who are already on the beat come back and train in. And they had this very large man with a very large knife, and these 2 young recruits had to walk into the apartment, and they had to figure out what to do if this person is going to harm himself, if he's going to harm one of the cops. And I watched several scenarios. We filmed several scenarios, and each scenario went down differently. Cops reacted differently. There were a group of young recruits who pulled their tasers. There were a group of young recruits who pulled their firearms. And I remember thinking to myself, the distance between the door and those police officers is where Bridget is right now. And I remember the trainer saying it'll take him less than a second to cross that plane, that hallway between the door and you with a knife. And I thought to myself, if they have to do this every single day, multiple times a day, what that must be like. And that leads into this question, and I'm going to throw it to you, Will, because you play the sort of the rookie and the young police officer on the show. What is the most surprising thing you've learned about police work?
Gosh, that's a great question. A lot of it is paperwork. That's what they keep telling me. I said, oh, I asked, I go on and on. I want to know all about these things. So I go to gym like everyone does, and what's it like? You have to draw a gun if you have to shoot somebody, and that's a lot of paperwork. It's not all, we show you the fun stuff on TV, but like everyone else is saying, I think that we all feel a huge responsibility to get it right. This show ultimately is a show about heroes, even if they're flawed. And I think we all feel a huge responsibility to those people that go out and do a difficult job every day.
All right. This question is for the cast, so I'll just throw it out there. It comes from Lauren, and in parentheses it says smiles. What has been the biggest thing you've learned from each other? Should be a reporter, Lauren.
I think it's basically family. We've become a family. I think you can see that beyond just what the show is. You don't get to. You can do an hour episodic show with this big a cast, and you may not see your fellow actors for 2-3 weeks, month maybe. This show, we see each other every 8 days. That's how long it takes us to shoot an episode, and I really look forward to seeing Frank's family and my family.
That's great. There's no name here, but it's a good question. Let me throw it to Len, but anybody can hop in. Are there any topics or stories the show has not covered that you would like to see?
I don't think so. But
Kevin, you're out of a job.
But Kevin is he's a wonderful writer, and he's talked to the writers and is a mentor to some. He's inviting young writers to join up and write an episode. And I think are you monitoring them when they're writing?
Well, we're helping bring them along, but it's and I'll speak to this a little bit. There's really not any taboo subjects as long as we clearly, if we're going to build a soapbox for one point of view, we have to build a soapbox of equal dimension for the other point of view, and we often do that in greater and lesser ways, and so we can kind of drive through pretty much anything that you would label controversial because we'll argue both sides of it. And argument means conflict, which means drama. So to me, it's much better than just going out and taking one side and trying to do a polemic. And we at least shoot for that most of the time.
Yeah, do you guys familiar with the Reverend Potter character, who's always at odds with Frank? Well, I talked to Otto, wonderful actor, great guy, that's his name. And I said, and Otto, Kevin feels this way, if we ever get in a scene and you feel like you're getting set up, that you don't have, so to speak, enough bullets on your belt, you got to tell me, but more importantly, tell Kevin, because that's not what we want. Reverend Potter has a valid point of view. Frank disagrees with it a lot of the time. But that doesn't matter. It's really important to get to, I don't know, the truth's always somewhere in the middle, they say, and that's not a bad lesson for everybody right now.
Yeah. Kevin, could this show exist as it does in Los Angeles or Baltimore, or is this a New York City show?
Well, I think it's a good question. It's a show about a tribe. So in this instance, it's a tribe of mostly Brooklyn-born Roman Catholic New York City cops. So it's partly the geography, but homicide life in this. I've seen great tribal stories about Baltimore, and there have been great tribal stories about Los Angeles cops, and one of the best ever was a fictional precinct, Hill Street Blues. So it's really about these characters in this place, but certainly New York is the greatest resource and the greatest place to shoot I can think of.
This is a question directly for you, Will. It says for Will on this. If you were a betting man, what odds would you put on Eddie being at the Sunday dinner table in season 8?
I ain't saying nothing. I don't know what else I can say about that. I think I got signed an NDA.
We really do make them up as we go along, so we don't have it planned out that far, but we're very aware of what a wonderful partnership Will and Vanessa make together.
I will say one thing. I will say Vanessa has been like, when do I get to come to the family dinner? Listen, I don't write it, he writes it.
There are some technical aspects of the show. Like, for example, in the one episode that we just watched tonight, I noticed there was a painting, and I hadn't noticed it before, of Teddy Roosevelt. Not a painting, a photograph of Teddy Roosevelt, who some of you may know was the police commissioner of New York City in the 19th century, the first, right? And so is that something, I mean, clearly you're thinking about those things. You've got the Twin Towers in Frank's office, those aspects. And again, that's sort of what I asked you when I asked you about this being a New York City show, because of those.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
Look, Frank was a first responder. He was in the North Tower when the other tower went down. You have to, and we have paid a certain respect and homage to that. Teddy Roosevelt, Kevin made me dress up like him for a costume party in one show. Not me, Frank. And Frank was embarrassed. Teddy is kind of touchstone we go to a lot. It's no accident you'll see his picture often in the background. He's kind of there for that.
We probably quoted him a good half a dozen times at length. It is New York, and to your point, you're absolutely right. So it's obviously set in New York, so we try to use as much New York, NYPD, the lore, all of it going back the century and a half that they've been around as they exist today.
You know a great piece of trivia? The New York Yankee emblem? Well, there was a medal for valor that Teddy had his pals at Tiffany design, because they all went to the Spanish-American War together, and they made it, but it ended up too costly, and Tiffany put it on the shelf, and the Yankees bought it. That NY used to be the Medal of Valor for NYPD officers.
Learn something new every day. We're going to be wrapping it up very soon, but let me try to get a few more questions in real quick, because we've pretty much exhausted all of these. Sammy, where would you like to see your character? How would you like to see your character develop as she becomes a woman? Is there, Kevin, an ideal already for her character going forward?
So right now she's at Columbia. I imagine studying political science. But I think that Nikki has always sort of been between either joining the family business and becoming a cop or following in her parents' footsteps and becoming an attorney. And given sort of her voice of opposition at the dinner table, I don't know, maybe an attorney. But personally, I would love to get into the cop side of things and maybe have an internship with Jamie or something.
I don't know if you noticed,
Uncle
they don't wear
Danny?
shoes like that in the NYPD.
Huh?
They don't wear shoes like that.
Oh my God.
Those are nice shoes.
That's okay. I did some work a couple of weeks ago. We aired an episode where I dressed plain.
Here's another.
She's gonna do an internship. Yep.
There's a lot of inside jokes here, not even I'm privy to. Amy, what's your favorite Sunday dinner?
I always say my favorite Sunday dinner is the last Sunday dinner we shot. We shot one today. We shot the season finale of this season, and there's just something really special about sort of saying goodbye to a season of 22 episodes and having that time with the family. And they're all unique, and each one is different, and it's always good to see each other. But in terms of favorite ones, I love when there's a fight. And I just love having an active part in the fight, and and whenever that happens, that's a real blessing. So.
Do you want to hear the Reagan chant for the one thing we've never had?
Yes.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Tater tots, tater tots, tater tots, tater tots, tater tots.
Kevin is blushing, so
That's family
he's over
dinner
there
about
blushing.
4 hours in.
I really want tater tots at family dinner. One of these days.
One of these.
What? What did you just say? You want handcuffs?
Tater
Tater
tots.
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 Tater tots. She loves tater tots.
Freudian.
Here's a really cute question, and I don't know, and it's about Sunday dinner. It says, and there's no name here, but it's we always invite you into our home Friday evening. Will you be so kind to invite us for Sunday dinner? I'll bring the wine. That's a cute question. You probably can't have all of you, but you're there in spirit. This has been incredible. Thank you, guys. So, Kevin, did you want to add something?
I did want to say one thing. We can't invite you all for Sunday dinner, much as we'd like to, but as has been pointed out, this is the 150th episode that we've done, and it's yet only the third time that we've been able to sit together and see it with an audience. It means an enormous amount to us to be able to sort of be live with you. So thank you for coming out.
There's one I missed here, and I just want to. I'm not sure if I'm going to read the name correctly. It says retired NYPD detective James Nusiforo. Nusiforo deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There he is. And I want to thank the cast of Blue Bloods for being here, and for all of you for being fans of the show. 150 more episodes, right? Thank you all very much. Thank you.